Thomas Wiegold is with me. He's a German defense expert. And I would like to start off with comments the French President Emmanuel Macron made. He refused to rule out that there could be ground troops in Ukraine from France, potentially. At the same time, we're hearing the German Chancellor rule exactly that out, that German boots could be on the ground. Is that really the contradiction it sounds like?
Well, I'm not sure about that. We have to see that all NATO members so far had this red line: no military in the Ukraine proper, no boots on the ground. And nobody's really sure what Macron intended to say last night. Maybe it's just an idea he's been floating around. We had some of these in recent times. And well, the Chancellor not only ruled out German boots on the ground, but he said no NATO country is planning to do that. That's far more. And this sheds a light on how problematic the Franco-German relation is at the moment.
Is this French-style strategic ambiguity at play there? And actually, as a defense expert, what are the chances that it would have to come to that?
Well, you mentioned the right word. It's ambiguity, and the French are, and Macron is well known for that. So we really don't know at the moment what to make out of this. And when we see that all NATO countries are very eager not to be considered part of this war, despite all the weapons deliveries to Ukraine, then I think it's rather improbable we'll see that in the near future.
Now, we're hearing from the German side that they're pretty satisfied that France has now committed $3 billion towards Ukraine. Germany is in Europe by far the largest supporter, overall the second largest after the United States. Now we have this debate over whether Germany should and will deliver the Taurus system to Ukraine. Would that really be the game changer that justifies the kind of debate we're seeing right now?
Well, no weapon system would be a game changer. We had a similar debate 1 year ago on the Leopard tanks, which Germany first didn't want to deliver and then it did. So this didn't change the outcome of the war. It doesn't give the groundbreaking results maybe some people had hoped for. So no, Taurus would not be a game changer, but it's a weapon system the Ukraine urgently requires and still requires, although the Chancellor practically ruled it out in public for the first time.
Yes, and for the first time, he actually explained his reasoning behind that. He actually pointed at France and Britain, saying Germany would not be able to do what they are doing, insinuating that there is an involvement, at least insinuating, of their own forces in potentially choosing targets. That's what we're hearing from the security experts who have gathered recently, actually also at the Munich Security Conference. What is really holding the German Chancellor back there?
Well, quite obviously, the UK and France are helping or enabling the Ukrainians when it comes to target disposition, to target requirements. And we have to see all these systems, the Taurus as well as the French Scalp and the British Storm Shadow, they require a lot of data for target acquisition and to reach their targets. And it would be the same with the German system. So quite obviously the question is, could the Ukrainians manage this on themselves? Well, they probably could, but then the second question comes up: do the Europeans trust the Ukrainians to look for the target themselves, to choose their targets without anybody from Germany or France or the UK saying no when it comes to a specific target? On the other hand, when we see that Spain and South Korea both have acquired Taurus as well, and I never heard that German soldiers would be needed either in Spain or in South Korea to operate those systems.
So is it in the end a question of trust towards the Ukrainian government and Volodymyr Zelensky, the president?
I think it's quite a question of trust. how far will you go to let the Ukrainians decide themselves which targets to choose? And so in the end, it's a political decision whether you want to do that.
So this whole debate, do you see that as largely domestic here in Germany? Is it a question of German decisiveness? And do you expect, in the end, the Germans to deliver exactly the system that they've ruled out? Because we've seen this in the past with other systems as well.
Yeah, well, I think it's a mainly German debate, and we have maybe the final point with what the Chancellor said. I'm not sure about that at the moment. And the other question, if we remember the tank debate last year, Germany finally agreed on delivering Leopard tanks after the US decided to deliver their Abrams tanks. So we have a similarity here. Ukraine also wants the US to deliver ATACMS missiles, which have a reach of 300 kilometers. So far, the US has not agreed on this. And if possibly the US might decide to deliver those missiles, maybe the German point of view might change as well.
This, of course, is also something that Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, has stressed in the past, that he would always want to act in lockstep with other NATO allies, but specifically singling out the United States. So is that question ultimately made in Washington, that the decision?
That seems to be the case, yes. On the other hand, you could also ask, yes, if he wants to be in lockstep with his allies, why not in lockstep with the UK and in lockstep with France? And that question remains open.
Although that comes down to the question whether it would require German forces to control targets. That's his argument.
Right.
But there are people within his own coalition who are contradicting, who's saying that's simply not necessary.
Well, technically, it's obviously not necessary, but this would require the trust you mentioned to hand over all the necessary data to the Ukrainians, and no one in Germany would have a final say on what the targets might be.
What does Ukraine actually need most desperately right now, and is your perception that Europe is giving it what it needs?
What the Ukraine needs most desperately is ammunition, artillery shells, and Europe obviously is not able to deliver what it has promised before. We remember the famous 1 million rounds, which had been promised, and this can't be fulfilled. So the Europeans are desperately trying to find other stockpiles outside Europe, maybe in third countries. We had the recent announcement of the German government to deliver 122 millimeter shells, which are East Bloc caliber size, which is not produced in Western Europe. So this comes from a former East Bloc country. And now we're talking about countries like India, which have large stockpiles of ammunition. And the question is whether they are willing to give over these stockpiles for use in Ukraine.
Now, Sweden has just overcome the final hurdle to become a NATO member. What will those new NATO members be able to contribute over Ukraine? Is this going to be changing the support?
I don't think it will change much in this regard, because Sweden already has been delivering a lot of arms and ammunition and whatever to Ukraine. So when Sweden finally joins NATO, this will not change the possibilities and the will of the Swedes to deliver.
What is your prediction? How much longer will this conflict last, and how much does it have the potential to spill into Europe?
I'm very sorry, I don't have a glass bowl, and I think how much longer this conflict will last and whether it's bound to spill over will depend on the willingness and the ability of Western, especially European NATO countries, to continue to deliver support to Ukraine.
Thomas Wiegold, German defense expert, thank you so much.
You're welcome.